right. Bonjour and bienvenue to La I'm not going anymore with this.
No, I was fully convinced.
Did you? If you close your eyes, I sound like a Belgian man.
I'll close my eyes and you take me there.
Take my breath away. All right. Where was I? Where is we? We is here. All right. Hey, you and welcome. My name is Mike, and I'm joined again. You can hear his him sucking away. You can hear him. Yeah.
I didn't know we started.
Thanks for joining us for Brabant, the Brabant Killers, the Brabant Gang, the madmen of Brabant. Part 2.
Great story. Have you been to Belgium before?
I have not. Never seen in Bruges. Does that count?
Yeah, I think so.
There we go. Close enough. Yeah.
I was in Belgium when I was in school. I was in a space camp.
You were at space camp? You are such a... The folks at home are going to be amazed to learn how much of a nerd you are.
I am, yeah. Big time. It was great. I had a great time. Actually, I wasn't actually meant to be there. So I went with the school. Yeah. And it was only for like the physics students. Mm-hmm. And I was
You didn't study physics, did
Nope.
you? Yeah, okay.
I was like, I really want to go. And they're like, well, okay, it's really only for like the physics students. I was like, well, actually, I'm thinking of taking on next year. No. Yeah. But that's what I told them. Yeah. And they're like, okay. I was like, I want to see if I'm interested in it. And it was great. They took me along. I didn't go to any of the classes, but I got to like go on. They'd have like a big spaceship simulator there. Oh. They did like zero gravity thing.
That's the ESA is in Belgium. The European Space Agency?
Yep. Okay. That's the one, yeah. Like we stayed there for a couple of days and the zero gravity. I thought when they said zero gravity, I thought it was going to be like, do you know, like in Armageddon where they go into a big room, you suck all the air out and you're kind of bouncing around.
You can float around. Is that not what it is?
No, it was like a big tank of water and you go in with scuba gear and then you go down and you do like experiments down like this bomb.
That's not zero. Tank. That's just underwater.
Yeah, it's just swimming.
Yeah, that's just swimming. That sucks.
Yeah. You lied to me. Yeah. Belgium. But apart from that, it was great. They also had like around the area because it was in like kind of the middle of nowhere, and there was all these rural towns. And we did like a few hikes, but there was one town that had like a vending machine full of like beer and flavored vodka. And it was fantastic. So I had a great time.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool. So now I know if you folks at home, if you ever want to go to Belgium, they have got vending machines full of beer and flavored vodka, which is guaranteed. It's just like Fat Frogs and Smirnoff Ice. It's like hangover in a bottle, basically. It's just vodka with pure sugar in it. You know what's a funny drink I used to make? We're totally going off topic. Did you ever make Skittle Brew?
No, is that just where you throw a load of Skittles in?
Throw a load of Skittles in a vodka bottle of vodka, throw a whole load of Skittles in it, but like don't put the purple ones in. That's what I was told.
Why?
I have no idea.
Okay, alright, yeah.
And then you leave it in there for a couple of days. Although the trick is you put tape around the lid of the cap, and then you put it in the washing machine. And the hot water of the washing machine, or dishwasher, sorry, not a washing machine. I always do that. For some reason I have a problem. My brain can't understand. It'd be pretty funny though.
Sucking out shards of glass and vodka and skill.
You know, folks, do put a bottle of vodka into your washing machine. See what happens. Send us a picture. Then you put it in the dishwasher, and the hot water helps like melt the Skittles quicker.
Okay, interesting.
I brought it to a music festival once when I was a young fella. It tastes pretty good, actually. I mean, it's just one of those things that you drink when you're like, I think I was like 18. You know, when you you don't like the taste of alcohol, but you just really want to get messed up.
Yeah. See, that's the way to do it. Bring spirits. But I remember like my first festival, and I was 17. I was like, because I always get fucked up in vodka, so I was like, I don't want to get fucked up. So I was like, I'll drink cans. You know where you stand with cans. Yeah. I brought 80 cans with me.
80 cans.
My back was broken. I had to carry them like through like a field, like hiking for.
What was this? Was this Electric Picnic or Oxygen?
Oxygen.
For the folks under music festivals in Ireland.
It was the year of the mud as well. So it just rained. So the run up to it rained nonstop. So as soon as we got, and it kept raining, but as soon as we got there, the place just turned from grass to like this foot of mud and sludge. I had a tent where it was meant to be me and my mate staying in. It said on the box, 2-man tent. Then I put it up.
No, that's classic. 2 men is 1 man. If you need a 4-man for 2 people.
I put up the tent, threw my bag in. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get in. It was tiny. It was so small. And then it's meant to have, it was one of these crappy tents that was only like a single layer, and there was like a little cap hat that you meant to attach on top. But it was so windy, I was attaching it, and I went, and it was gone over the fence. I was like, all right. So there's that bit, this gaping hole in the top of my tent, and it kept raining. There was about like an inch of water. My tent sunk into the ground. Yeah. I think on the Saturday night, someone slashed my tent open, and then they were using my tent as a urinal. I was like, well, I'm not staying there. So I slept on the chair for the next 2 nights. But I had 80 cans, so it was okay.
You had your beer jacket and then some. You had beer parka on like a freaking whole wetsuit. Man, that's fun. Yeah, that's the beauty of music festivals. You're supposed to have an awful time.
That's it. Yeah,
you just get completely drenched, covered in mud.
Yeah, all that
pissing everywhere. Yeah. It's great. Love them. Haven't been to one in about 10 years. And have no plans to ever go again. So yeah, let's get into today's story. The Brabant Killers. As we said, the Mad Killers of Brabant, that's a name that was ascribed to them by the media simply because all of these attacks occurred in the Brabant region of Belgium. I don't even think it's called, we said it in the first episode, but it's not even really called Brabant anymore. It's like 3 different regions. There's like Belgium, Brabant, or basically a region just around Brussels. But from 1981 to 1985, they murdered 28 people, injured dozens more, made off with less than 100,000 let's just say dollars in total from robbing supermarkets, mainly supermarkets, but a couple of other stores too, and also were peachy keen on stealing coffee, wine, and cooking oil.
Yep, all the while being very trigger happy.
The police never seemed to be able to catch them, even when they should have really catched them.
Yeah.
They just somehow always managed to slip out of the police's grasp for over in the, like, how many attacks they did, the shitload of attacks they did. The Brabant always seemed to be one step ahead of everybody else. Make sure that no evidence was left behind.
Yeah, they were always one step ahead, and they robbed that shop. It was a textile factory that just got set up to create bulletproof vests, and no one knew apart from like a couple of people within the police force. But they knew somehow. There's definitely some sort of insider knowledge going.
Yeah. Well, that is the story of today's episode when we'll get into conspiracy time. We're going to go through a lot of people who were publicly named as being linked to the Brabant gangs. Some of these people are real sacks of shit, but we'll get into it. So, in the 40 years that marks today, since the chaos from 1981 to 85, the tale of the Mad Killers of Brabant, it's never been far from the Belgian news in one way or another. Mostly, though, it's the occasional brief commentary when events hit, just another anniversary, basically. Every 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on and so forth, it'll be in the news again. Just hoping that somebody will come forward. Then, once in a while, there's what seems like a breakthrough, like a deathbed confession, and we do have one of them too. There's regularly just enough that will shake, the House of Cards of hope, and that, things might finally be open and unveiled. And so we're going to go through a lot of that today, a lot of links, but of course, as this case, it's so big, it's gone on for so many years, there is like countless avenues. We'll just go through the big dogs, woof woof, that have piqued the interest of investigators over time. And let's begin with Keith, you're up. The Borains.
The Borains. Yeah, so in 1983, there was a brief moment when it looked like the crime had been cracked.
And this was in the midst of the attacks. They attacked from 81 to 85, and this was 83.
Yeah, so we're in the middle and they're like, we got them, guys.
Yeah.
So following interrogations, a former municipal policeman and several other men belonging to a gang of thieves called the Borains, apparently they'd confessed and were charged with the involvement with the killings. So the men they'd been thrust into the light of suspicion with ballistics on the weapon used in the Brabant crimes and had been traced back to the policeman. The charges didn't last too long when it was revealed that prosecutors had deliberately suppressed a report from a German ballistics expert which had contradicted the prosecution's own forensics that had put the man in the frame in the first place. So the charges, they were dismissed and the men were freed. And it didn't really help that the Brabant gang had also struck while these men were in custody. All of them later said that their interviews had been like a 36-hour long plus ordeal that amounted to what they said no less than torture. They also said that they'd been drip-fed information by the detectives to make their false confessions. So it really seemed like the police at the time were just trying to get someone.
Which is interesting. So if 2 years into the crimes in 1983, the police already sound like they were desperate to have somebody behind bars for the Brabant killings. They're like, oh yeah, folks, we're heroes, we got him. And it's like, so they were forcing this person to basically this. It sounds like they were just like a small time gang, forcing them to admit they were the Brabant killers when they weren't. So then obviously they had to let them go, and the Brabant killings continued for another 2 more years. So the police must have even getting more desperate. Yet they still didn't really stop them. Nothing really happened.
Yeah.
We'll go through with the investigation, but there were so many cock-ups.
There was a lot.
There was definitely people in the police force who were freaking throwing out evidence. There's probably 1 or 2 cops who were like, oh, I want to solve this, and everybody else was like, no.
Yeah, that's great. This whole story really reminds me of Line of Duty. It's like
I haven't seen that.
It's very good. It's a BBC show, but it's basically it's internal affairs or investigating. There's these crooked cops that are involved within crime and stuff. It's very good. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
If you haven't seen it, I'd highly suggest watching it. It's a very good series.
All right, so for the folks out there who have seen The Line of Duty, you know what Keith's talking about, and apparently it is a lot like this case. For those of you out there who have not seen The Line of Duty, it's available on the BBC apparently, and maybe we should give it a go.
Maybe we should. And if Line of Duty, if you want to sponsor us, that'd be great.
Yes, also, Line of Duty, you should actually pay me. Pay us for shouting out your show. Shouting out your shitty small-time show that nobody's going to watch anyway. Damn, maybe that'll work. Hey, listen, I tried to extort Coke last time. Let's see how this one goes.
We're in talks with Pepsi now, Coke, so get on it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. BBC, we're in talks with some other TV station. So, BBC, you know where we are. So now, let me talk to you about a man. This guy is a man of mystery, and a man who's just a giant piece of shit. We mentioned him, this guy in the first part, Danny Buhush. So for those of you maybe who remember his name in part 1, he was linked to, so the very first time the Brabant gang struck was when they robbed the Group Diane barracks. Group Diane was like a special forces, like think like Delta Force or Green Berets. Who's the best of the best. And they robbed their barracks, which is like pretty hardcore. Again, like they're not just some many old assholes. Like you have to be pretty good to rob like a special forces barracks. They stole guns from the special forces guys, and a little while later, those guns were later found. Some evidence from the robbery was found, and it was found in a place belonging to Mr. Danny Buhush. So they're believed that he's linked, obviously, if they're finding evidence of a robbery in his place, he must be linked. So one man, yes, we know, almost certainly an associate, if not a full-fledged member of the gang, was Madani Buhush, known as Danny. And Buhush was a dun Belgian gendarmerie.
Oh.
Is that how you pronounce it again?
Gendarmerie. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Okay.
I just really enjoy saying
I'll say it that way. Gendarmerie. So, Danny Buhush, or Mr. Gendarmerie Buhush, he originally worked in a detective branch of the Gendarmerie, but was ultimately kicked down the line into regular duties in 1981. He was kicked out of the detective branch when he was caught trying to track and listen into the actions of another detective unit. He was spying on his colleagues, essentially. Before he got kicked out, however, though, Danny Buhush had managed to work his way in with several of his colleagues in the department and had several different criminal enterprises going on with them, which sounds like that Line of Duty show you were talking about, a detective but also a criminal.
Yeah.
This is ripe for plot thickening. And Danny had some pretty serious shit going on. Serious enough that Buhush was one of the few not to be either fired, murdered, or thrown into prison, or is still currently on the run. Basically, everybody else who's working in had a horrible fate. But if you don't already think he was a total piece of shit, Buhush was also heavily involved in, I guess what you'd call them, they're called Westland New Post, and they're like an openly neo-Nazi organization. Something that many, including officials, have speculated could be a driving force behind the gang's activities. We're going to get a little bit deeper into this, but it definitely seems like the Brabant gang have links to, the Westland New Post and neo-Nazis.
Yes.
And far-right people. I'm always amazed, by the way, just like neo-Nazis in places like Belgium. It's like, you're a victim of the Nazis. They killed like so many of your people. Why would you want to be a Nazi? I don't understand this shit.
No, I don't get it at all. But it's definitely, they seem to have ties to like this far-right neo-Nazi thing, and appear to have like infiltrated the police to get.
Keith, we will get there.
Okay,
we will get there.
Okay, we'll get there.
We will get there. Let's talk about Danny Buhush for now. So in 1983, Buhush and a pal, who's also another former gendarmerie named Robert Bayer, they set up a private investigation firm together. And it's been noted that Robert Bayer, his friend, we'll talk a little bit more about him in a bit, he bore a striking resemblance to witness descriptions of the man known as Le Giant.
Le Géant?
The Giant, yes. Is that what giant is in French? Le Géant?
From my phonetics that I looked up, yeah, it's like Géant, so Le Géant.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure it's...
I thought it was like, it would have been something more... Lethal beau. I don't know.
Le big man.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds more French than Le Géant. That just sounds like you're saying the giant in a French accent. Yeah. So coincidentally, the officer who kicked Danny Buhush from the detective branch into just like regular police, like demoting him, also taking away Danny from many of the resources he would have used to operate his criminal enterprises. Well, he was very nearly killed later on when someone opened fire on him with an automatic machine gun. Who would have reason to kill this man? It goes to show Danny Buhush, well, he was a vengeful man. Fuck with him, you'll get a gun. He was not afraid to kill. So in addition to both the Brabant gang and Danny Buhush being known to have stolen, used, or possessed many of the same types of guns, I'm talking MP5s, MAC-10s, riot shotguns, etc., Buhush was also known to use similar methods of disposal of incriminating items as those used by the Brabant gang. But so far so circumstantial. But the involvement of law enforcement, whether all members of the gang or just some, it really makes a lot of sense considering just how badly handled and so frequently obstructed the investigation was. So Danny Buhush was eventually jailed after being arrested in January 1986 for the murder of a man named Juan Mendez. Mendez worked as a weapons engineer. Buhush had stolen Mendez's gun collection, but police speculate that wasn't why he killed him. The police speculate that Mendez had information on the Brabant gang, and Buhush wanted, or was ordered to, make sure Juan Mendez couldn't speak up. Would make sense as well. Juan Mendez, a weapons engineer, Brabant gang, stole a lot of guns. Yeah. Maybe brought him to him to, I don't know, tinker with them or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he might have been familiar with the guns, or yeah, as I said, like they may have come to him. So yeah.
So Danny Buhush was linked to Juan Mendez's murder. He was originally linked through ballistics after a pistol was found hidden in a spaghetti box in his freezer and was a match for the gun used to kill Mendez. Yeah, just hiding it's my good hiding place, my spaghetti.
Why is your spaghetti in the freezer?
Yeah, frozen spaghetti. You never freeze spaghetti?
Frozen spaghetti?
Yeah,
spaghetti doesn't go off.
Spaghetti?
Yeah, well,
no, if it's cooked spaghetti,
it's
obviously
cooked.
What the hell are you thinking of?
Like a box of uncooked spaghetti?
No, like if you're cooking spaghetti, like if you're making a whole big pot of like spaghetti bolognese.
Oh, okay.
Put some in the freezer for later.
Yeah, no, okay.
Like pasta.
Yeah.
So while Danny Buhush was in prison serving for the murder of Juan Mendez, police searched a garage locker he rented and discovered several weapons that had been stolen from Juan Mendez, along with the guns stolen in the Group Diane burglary of 1981, the very first attack. It should have been really the end of Danny Buhush, right? But he was released less than 2 years later, in November of 88, after Buhush's legal team successfully challenged the ballistic evidence on a technicality. After 2 years of being linked to a murder, he was released. Still, it's amazing how Brabant gang guns were found in his property. And it's like, oh yeah, that just happened. Like, it's never like he didn't do any time or anything like that, or didn't find any further links. It's just
wild. And because I said like a small technicality. Like, we might get him on something else. Like,
yeah, exactly.
The guns were there.
Yeah,
you had them.
That truly just makes the whole police seem corrupt and everything. Like all of the legal prosecutors. Yeah, they're all like just in each other.
Yeah.
That's what it makes seem like.
It seems very corrupt.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, as well, to note that Juan Mendez also had links to the far right. Like your man, even some of their victims had links to the far right, like Jose Van der Rijn and stuff. Yep. So in 1989, then, Danny Buhush went on the run after him and his old pal Robert Bayer got into a shootout and ended up murdering a diamond dealer in the city of Antwerp. After being then sent back to Belgium to face trial, Danny Buhush claimed that the shooting was a result of an argument over a debt that got out of hand, but the investigators believe that it was just basically a robbery gone wrong. Ultimately, Danny Buhush was also revealed to have been the leader of an extortion racket that involved blowing up gas lines directly outside shops belonging to a supermarket chain. Buhush had originally cooked up the gas line scheme sometime in the 70s and had carefully planned it out over the next few years. He even drafted several close friends to set things up and even helped build him a secret tunnel that ran underneath the building where he arranged for the extortion money to be dropped. It's a ridiculous plot that he was, I'm going to get extortion money from supermarkets by building secret tunnels and blowing up gas lines. It's like a ridiculous over-the-top plot. Yeah, but again, it's like, okay, Danny Buhush must have had a lot of resources to be able to pull something off this, like Brabant gang had. And secondly, targeting supermarkets.
There we go. Were those tunnels filled with cooking oil and
and wine and coffee? Hey. Danny Buhush was released on parole in September 2000, and using a connection from the Nazis at Westland New Post, he got a job and settled in an isolated town in the French Pyrenees. Buhus's death was no less controversial than his life. He died in an accident while trimming branches from a tree 5 years after his release, with his death only becoming known to authorities several days after he died.
I nearly did that to my dad.
What?
My dad, he was like trimming bushes out the back with a chainsaw. And I came behind and scared him. I just lost a run of myself.
You scared your dad while he had a chainsaw in his hand? That seems like a terrible idea.
I don't know what I was doing. He's like, oh, jeez. It was very funny.
I'll take your word for it.
Not at the time. He was very angry.
So the idea of Buhush being heavily suspected to have connections to the Brabant gang and their crimes, yet he was also able to die without investigators being aware, it's kind of insane. So never mind the fact they hadn't even bothered to lean on him for information after his release. They weren't even keeping a watch on him, and they didn't even know he had died. So whether Danny Buhush was ever a core member or even played an active role in any of the robberies or murders, it's a little more murky than it first might appear. Danny didn't match any of the descriptions given of the Brabant gang with or without masks. But doesn't mean he didn't have any links to the gang, and I mean, he definitely has links to it. If weapons from the gang were found like on his property, he's linked to the gang. Who knows if he was one of them? I mean, so you had the three core members, the old man, the killer, and the giant.
Yeah.
And then it said like maybe there was one or two other guys.
Yeah.
Because the descriptions would vary. But let's just say there's three guys, and then maybe Danny Buhush would just potter in from time to time.
Like, he had to be involved. He had the guns. He was building tunnels by the supermarket.
It's so weird though, because his plan to build tunnels at the supermarket, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's like, okay, he was trying to rob supermarkets himself in a different way, but they just never got enough money to make, like, why would he join the Brabant gang? Because it seems like he actually did want money, like how he had gotten arrested after shooting a diamond dealer in a robbery gone wrong. So he clearly wanted money. The Brabant gang didn't seem like they wanted money. They killed 28 people for less than $100,000.
That's true. Yeah, this whole thing is
like 5 years. Yeah. It's like no theory makes sense about the Brabant gang, but maybe it does. We'll get to it. Next is a person I want to talk about is Robert Bayer. Bob, as he was better known by, he was a good friend of Danny Buhush, and of course he was, you guessed it, another ex-gendarmerie of his colleague Danny Buhush, having joined the gendarmerie in 1974. So Bayer worked in anti-narcotics. He was a narc, man. And that's where he met Danny Buhush. But old Bob, he was ultimately kicked out after being caught performing illegal wiretaps. That's when he and Danny, they booted up and they opened their own private investigation agency in Belgium. They then continued to use their very grey interpretation of the law, and they actually did quite well for themselves. To beat the law, you gotta break the law, or whatever that saying goes.
Yeah, they know red tape or no restrictions.
Exactly, like Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my god.
Holy shit.
Batman and Robin.
Yeah, is the Brabant gang seriously Batman?
They were building a Batcave.
Hey, now it makes sense. With coffee and wine, you need them. And so their private investigations firm, it got their reputation for getting the job done. And according to Bobby, they even had government contracts. Which, when you think he'd been kicked out of the gendarmerie, you think maybe you wouldn't get government contracts?
Was there no background checks?
Once again, it seems like they're all just corrupt. Yeah. It's like you get kicked out of the police, which would usually be like kind of a bad thing on your name.
Yeah, you get kicked out, but then you come back in the side door.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what are these guys, politicians or something? Yeah. So the team up, however, didn't last too long, and they both eventually split up. Robert Bayer was questioned in relation to the murder of Juan Mendez. Of course, his good friend was the main suspect in the case, and just got off on a technicality. And Bayer then was the police were keeping a good eye on him and looking into what he had been up to. This soon led to him being in trouble and in custody when it came to light that he'd been illegally wiretapping phones as a private detective, much like he had been doing as a police, which is what got him kicked out of the police, and he was soon arrested. He was charged and imprisoned, but released soon after. And some sources say that he turned on Danny Buhush in prison, grassing him up for the garage full of guns in order to get released. Which then would lead you to believe that if Rob Bayer knew Danny Buhush had a garage full of guns, including the Brabant gang's guns, maybe he was a member of the Brabant gang. Had some links to it.
Yeah.
Who knows? Bayer was wanted once again when his wife went to police and told them about a gun that she thought may have been used in the Brabant gang crimes, which had been hidden in a box of frozen spaghetti once again. That seems to be the place in Belgium. Is gun safe? No. Frozen spaghetti? Works every time.
It's like at the meeting of the Brabant gang, it's like just going through things like, guys, if you got a gun, you got to hide it in the spaghetti box.
Exactly. You cook that spaghetti, you put the gun in the spaghetti, and then you've got gun spaghetti.
Gun spaghetti.
You unfreeze your gun, you get a gun, and you get spaghetti. Hey, who doesn't like spaghetti? Now, Bayer was actually already in Spain at this point, and so an international warrant for his arrest was issued to get him back for that gun. Another embarrassment for the police and the authorities, as if they didn't have enough. They didn't even bring him back to Belgium, he simply turned up by himself. And not only that, he held a press conference from his own house, asserted his innocence, and then disappeared once again. The police literally were not even trying to arrest him. And eventually, though, Bayer did voluntarily hand himself in to a judge. He was released provisionally in 1988, went back to working as a private detective, and then shortly after he went to Antwerp, where himself and Danny, they ended up killing that diamond dealer in a robbery gone wrong. And this time, however, Bayer went on the run and finally settled in Thailand, living under an assumed identity. And he wasn't arrested until 1991, when he was nabbed by a joint Interpol-Thai police task force. And the Thais, they sent him back to Belgium to face the music for the Antwerp diamond robbing incident alongside Danny Buhush's good buddy. The trial lasted for 5 months and ended with a guilty verdict. Bayer got 14 years. So like Buhush, who moved to the French Pyrenees, Robert was released early and moved back to Thailand, where he settled in and is still living there to these days. Over the years, especially with his clear links to guys like Danny Buhush and his own military training, Bayer has been named as a possible contender for being one of the madmen of Brabant, but has always maintained his innocence and was never been officially charged with anything related to it. In February 2010, he released an autobiography in which he claimed to have been an agent for the Soviet Union and that he'd worked for them out of a sense of obligation to their cause, which he says he truly believed in. I don't think he believes in anything.
No.
Journalists and researchers are pretty skeptical about this and have cast doubt on how true his stories actually are.
Both of them are definitely involved.
Yeah, Danny Buhush and Robert Bayer. So that's two of the kind of that most highly linked. That's like the less conspiratorial ones.
Yeah,
but
that's kind of clear cut.
They're clear. They had some involved. They may not have been one of the three main gangs, but they were definitely either feeding them information, helping cover their tracks,
somehow intertwined with it.
Yeah, they're definitely like going in and removing evidence, that kind of shit.
So there's another guy here who. There's a couple of theories about it. So his name is Christian Bonklowski. So in 2017, there seemed to be a massive breakthrough that many in Belgium thought was the catalyst for the mystery finally coming to an end. So 2 years earlier, in 2015, an ex-gendarmerie... Another one. Oh my God, shocking. His name was Christian Bonklowski. So allegedly he made a deathbed confession that he had been the giant to his brother. So his brother, he kept quiet for a while, largely due to the shock and the disbelief, before ultimately he just became overcome with guilt.
Right.
Eventually he reached out to authorities and the media. So Bonklowski was alleged to have been motivated by a serious grudge that he had held ever since he was dismissed from the Group Diane. That same Group Diane whose barracks were the site of the gang's first raid that would have required an inside man to pull off. So Bonklowski was kicked out of the elite unit after a negligent discharge incident in 1981, not long before the burglary took place. In the years after the Brabant killings, Bonklowski, he spiraled into bitterness and alcoholism, leading to his death at the age of 61 in 2015. So the police, they did their due diligence. They got saliva samples and fingerprints taken from Bonklowski in 2000, and they were compared to other samples collected from various scenes from the Brabant killing spree. But unfortunately, they came up negative. Obviously, just like with the Danny Buhush, who had his fingerprints analysed and also came up negative, it's very possible that Bonklowski, he was indeed the giant, but either hadn't been present at those particular crimes, or the samples collected from them, maybe he was just lucky enough that he didn't leave a viable sample point.
Right, yeah.
So authorities, they clearly did. They took his confession very seriously, because even with the fingerprint and saliva samples proving a non-starter, they came back negative. In 2017, authorities used modernized genetic testing techniques to compare samples taken from Bonklowski's relatives and the crime scene samples, but once again, the results were negative. Though some physical forensic evidence would pretty much have confirmed that Bonklowski was the man behind the face paint, and the strongest evidence that authorities currently had, they were purely anecdotal. But that doesn't mean that it's still not quite convincing. Like, according to one of Bonklowski's former girlfriend named Nicole, he'd get visibly irate and even violent when people pointed out, even in a joking manner, that he looked uncannily like police sketches of the giant.
Yeah, he looks kind of like you.
And no, you fucking...
yeah, he'd like freak out.
I'll kill you! I'll kill you all your family! It's like, oh, okay.
All right, calm down.
And he does. If you look at the sketches and a photo of Bonklowski, like, have a look for yourself. It's pretty uncanny.
Same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy. Yeah. All right. Now, let me talk for a second about an organization I mentioned a couple of times already, the Westland New Post. So, like, on the surface, you might think, oh, these are just some dumbass Nazi skinheads. But they're not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
These guys are, they're a lot scarier than that. Mention them, people with, like, basically Nazi sympathies, very, like, ultra-nationalist, very far-right kind of sympathies, and there's going to be a lot of links. A lot of the victims were like a couple of them were linked to the dictator Francisco Franco. They had fought on his side in the Spanish Civil War, but it doesn't seem like it was like the opposite of that. It wasn't somebody killing somebody who had completely different beliefs to them. It was more like somebody was cleaning house, if you will, and was killing other members of the gang, or
who were maybe going to turn or flip, or
that kind of stuff. So one of the strongest theories about what and whom was really behind the Brabant gang's activities was the gang was less of a gang and more of a terrorist group. It would certainly explain a whole lot about some of the things the group did and how they were able to evade capture despite being wanted by 95% of the country, and this is like 40 years later. So, the Westland New Post was a faction of ultra-right-wing fascists founded in 1981, same year the attacks began, and of course it counted Madani Buhush among its members, along with Robert Bayer and, well, a couple of others. So it might sound like a wild conspiracy theory, but it's actually supported by quite a lot of proof. Throughout the early to mid-1980s, members of the Westland New Post, the WNP, set out to put their people in positions of influence and power. They managed to infiltrate the fractured police services, which seemed, let's be honest, really incompetent, corrupt, lazy, or were in on it.
They didn't seem to know what was going on.
They didn't seem to care. So basically, that's why you had people like Madani Buhush in there. They were putting their people into these positions of power and into government agencies.
Yeah.
Early in its existence, the group had even received support from members of the Belgian parliament. That support, it eventually died down. Supporting Nazis is kind of not cool. So that's good. Yeah. At least, publicly, though, I mean, of course, in public, they were like, no, I'm not supporting them and giving them money. Well, they are.
Yeah.
But it's likely, it continued. The support continued in the background, and there's a fair amount of evidence that it did. So the leaders of the WNP, Paul Latinus and Michel Libert, aimed to take advantage of the fractured Belgian society and promote their neo-Nazi agenda. Libert would later be questioned about his potential involvement in the Brabant crimes. When agents from the state police finally managed to embed themselves into the WNP, they found out, to their horror, the Westland New Post had already built an intricate network and infiltrated the municipal and even national government.
Jesus.
This is like X-Files conspiracy level. They're in the house. You never know who's a double agent. Yeah, but this was actually totally makes sense. I mean, the Brabant gang has links to them, and then it's like, they had loads of police forces just not bothering to investigate, removing evidence, deleting evidence, destroying evidence.
Like, it does. Like, I like this theory. It makes a lot of sense on how they got away with it for so long. What doesn't make sense about this theory is, what were they doing though? Like, why? Like, the crimes they were doing was like, still doesn't make sense to push their agenda, Well, see, what I think though is usually in times of like trouble and strife and when people are scared, people tend to be more conservative when they're scared, when times are tough. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you set up this gang that goes around just murdering people and killing people and robbing people. You get the public scared. So you probably get people to support more of your fascist side of you.
So just got a couple of lunatics out to kind of
cause mayhem. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what, Mike? I'm sold.
I know, I'm pretty good.
This makes complete sense.
I just came up with that on the fly. So Latinus was found dead in 1984 of an apparent quote-unquote suicide, unquote. Yes. But there's... But there's plenty of reason to doubt that was the case, and he may have been killed by his own side or one of his many enemies. After his death, however, the WNP's power and influence faded considerably. They didn't have a figure like him. It's kind of funny that he had, like, is that his real name, Latinus? I actually don't know, because it just sounds like it's Latin. It's very Roman. Yeah, like Nazis often use Roman ideology.
Yeah, Latinus. Maybe it's an anagram for anus till.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you never know. The WNP were in the headlines again in 1987, however, when a man named Marcel Barbier was convicted of brutally murdering 2 people in a synagogue in 1983. When police raided Barbier's home, they found neo-Nazi memorabilia and a ton of guns. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, they found in this guy's home a number of classified documents belonging to NATO, folks.
Jesus.
NATO were involved. This goes all the way to the top. NATO. I always knew it was NATO. Even when it wasn't NATO, it was NATO. I'm telling you. Those documents had come to this Marcel Barbier's guy, who was clearly a member of the WMP, from Michel Libert, co-founder of Westland New Post. Michel Libert was a volunteer at a NATO communications center and had been able to sneak out the documents, but he should not have been able to get anywhere near those documents. Libert has also long been suspected of involvement with the Brabant gang, and over the years has been questioned many times, but to date hasn't been charged with anything. So listen, folks, I'm not even getting a tinfoil hat out, because this is legit. Some have speculated, by some I mean me, that the Brabant gang killings were orchestrated by NATO to usher in a new world order. That's what they're doing. See, we were talking about Nazis taking over Belgium. That's small fry. Who cares? Nobody cares. No, you want to take over NATO. That's like half the world is in NATO. You take over all of Europe, and then you take over America and all the other countries that are in NATO. So that's what they were doing, and then they were going to usher in a new world order, the Illuminati. Essentially, they're Illuminati. That's where this is going.
That is what
you take Belgium, you take the world.
Yeah,
that's how you start.
That
right?
Happened. Yeah, okay.
It is what happened. I like you. Don't try and appease me.
I'm fully there, man.
And guess what? They targeted supermarkets because, of course, they did. They targeted the very supply of food people need to eat. Next thing you know, you're too scared to go to the grocery store. You have to go to a NATO food camp to get your supermarket groceries, and who knows what they're feeding you? Probably something human, soil and green type shit that they're feeding you. And then next thing you know, you're one of them. You're a docile sheep. NATO's got you. Brabant gang are NATO. That's actually my theory on the Brabant gang. Okay, maybe not quite that, but a lot of that.
Yeah.
It is weird though.
I like that. Yeah.
It has links okay, so the Brabant gang were definitely part of the WNP. Yeah. Or were linked to them very strongly. They were best buddies. Yeah. And then a guy in the WNP works for NATO and is somehow magically he's a volunteer at a communication center. Yeah. So basically he does advertisements and PR and writes sponsored by NATO. This is nothing. This is a bullshit job. He's a volunteer. It's not a real job. How is he able to get classified documents? Giving them to a guy who murders people at a synagogue years later. It is weird though.
I really like that theory. I think it's very good. And I am fully convinced. But to be fair, like any conspiracy theory, as soon as they're like, yes, I believe that. Yeah,
I know. But it's interesting. I mean, people are thinking that it's, the gendarmerie are covering up for the Brabant gang. Maybe it's the gendarmerie under the... I'm doing a creepy hand motion.
The puppeteers
of NATO.
Yeah, yes. Well, I guess the true test will be if you don't hear from us again. We'll know why. Shit,
we're speaking the truth. We're speaking too much truth. NATO, don't listen to this. I'm actually for NATO. I will. Hey, listen, Southern Green, NATO, fill me up. I'll do it. I'll become a sheep.
If you're looking for a sponsor.
yeah, exactly. NATO, you should sponsor us, by the way. In fact,
we're already in talks with Pepsi and
Pepsi and the BBC. Yeah. NATO, you should pay us and we'll stop talking about who you are killing people as part of the Brabant gang. But you never know. Okay, so to take a step back, though, I definitely think there's obviously some political motives to it. I kind of feel like the only reason the Brabant gang was doing what they were doing, it was for fun. But they were doing it for such a long time and killed so many people. I don't think that it was for fun because they never really got anything of value. Like $100,000 was combined over like 4 years and murdering this many people. It seems like too small fry. Yeah. So I do think there has to be some kind of political links or connections to them or something more there. There was a goal there. We can't see it.
I just can't connect the strings.
Yeah. Oh, my mind.
There has to be something there. I said like it wasn't for the money. It was clearly for just to create chaos and fear. And they got away with everything just being like one step ahead the whole time. So it was definitely like infiltration into the police, if not into like politics and stuff. So yeah, there was just something there. Definitely, there's something there. I don't think we'll ever find out completely.
Well, I don't know enough about Belgian politics to say. Goddamn this damn mind of mine. I can't figure out Belgian politics.
Just shooting from the hip.
I know. I don't know anything about it. I just realised I know nothing about Belgian politics. Any Belgian listeners out there, explain Belgian politics to us in 5 words or less. I'm not reading it. If it's any more than one sentence, I'm not going to read it.
So there's another suspect as well. So his name is Patrick Hamers. So he's the final suspect. Mm-hmm. He may be worth a small mention. So unlike the previous Patrick, he was from the other side of the fence. So he was already a well-known criminal at the time of the Brabant crimes. So Patrick, he had his little band of not-so-merry men. They targeted armoured trucks carrying a large amount of cash, and they operated around the same time as the Brabant gang. And Patrick had even himself, he also had a nickname, which was La Grande Blonde, which sounds like a beer.
It does, doesn't it? It sounds like a delicious Belgian wheat beer.
Yeah, I would drink that.
Yeah.
But I would drink anything. Yeah. But that was enough to have some throw him in the same frame as being the giant. Hamers, he eventually committed suicide suicide,
quote unquote,
but maybe it actually was, in 1993, age 40, while he was in prison awaiting trial for his part in the kidnapping of the former Belgian Prime Minister.
Interesting. Back to politics once again.
We're back to politics, which we know nothing about.
Well, you know what, Keith, I'm shooting from the hip. You know me. I talk about things I don't know anything about with confidence. Because
I'll figure it out along the way.
I will, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, he was in there with several. He was in there on several serious charges. But the reason that I keep this mentioned a little brief is simple. I don't really think he was involved. He wasn't connected to the gendarmerie or the far right, as far as we know, which was like many of the other suspects. Also, his gang and our methods of operation, they were very different than the Brabant gang. So they went for high value, high reward targets that could net far more in a single armoured van heist than they ever could from all the supermarkets that the Brabant boys hit combined.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, Patrick's reasons were, they seem to be purely greed to fuel his cocaine addiction and his self-indulgent lifestyle.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like he was interested in stealing cooking oil. 10 to 15 litres of it, if you can believe it. We've gone through the list of suspects and our theories about who was really behind the Brabant gang, which I genuinely do believe it is more than just a random robberies, or a simple. There was obviously they didn't gain anything. It didn't seem like it wanted to gain anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would go into stores and not even rob anything, just kill people in it.
Yeah,
just for crack. Yeah. So I do think it was the motive would have been, to change the culture or to instill a sense of fear.
Yeah, just create fear. And
and madness. Who knows what for? Maybe they were. These like Nazi groups. Maybe they were the other way. Maybe they were like these ultra left-wing groups who were trying to make the Nazis look. I was gonna say try and make the Nazis look bad. The Nazis do a good enough job of looking bad themselves. But you know what I mean? Like who knows? I don't know. I don't know. Again, as I said, I don't know anything about politics in Belgium, so I don't know what their policies would have been like at the time, but who knows? Yeah. False flags, I don't know.
Yeah. Give us your theories.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below. But let's go what the modern investigation has uncovered. So over the almost 40 years of investigation into the Brabant killings, detectives have gathered and tested 2,748 individual sets of fingerprints and nearly 600 different DNA samples against those taken from the various crime scenes. They've even gone to the extreme lengths of exhuming more than 40 people for analysis, and one exhumation is no small task, so digging up 40 dead bodies, that's a lot of people to dig up, and in spite of all of this and checking thousands of pieces of information, following up on several thousand tips from the public and a whole host of arrests, including those of several former investigators themselves, officially no one has been held accountable for the dozens and dozens of those left physically and mentally scarred, or for the deaths of those 28 people that included law enforcement officers, women, children, and the elderly. Not even a small portion of the estimated total 7 million Belgian francs that the gang stole over the course of the raids has ever been recovered. 7 million Belgian francs, so we're still talking less than $100,000, which 100,000 is a lot of money.
I wish I had it.
Hey, listen, I wouldn't say no to that in my bank end, but I mean, for what they did, the amount of attacks they had, the amount of people they killed. As you said, that other gang, they would get more than that in one, robbing one bank car. Or whatever,
like 100,000 of them was like pocket change. They'd lose that run for the bus.
He'd snort that up his nose in a day, your man Patrick Hamers. So it's certain to say that financial gain was never the gang's main motivation. Then they may as well have just even thrown the money away, like Joker style, burnt the money. So the mishandling, or corruption, definitely, of the investigation into the Brabant killings, whether deliberate or not, was in large part responsible for the top to bottom overhaul of the Belgian law enforcement system, and the country today runs a much more modernized and much more successful, centralized federal police service. I mean, I think as well, you know, they're talking about testing all the evidence and exhuming people. I guarantee that any evidence that would have truly linked the corrupt officers deleted it, the police, people like Danny Buhush, Robert Bayer, they were able to get in there and like chuck it in the bin or burn it, whatever.
It's like long gone.
So the rest of the 80s, 90s, and 2010s, or 20s, I don't know, what decade?
The noughties?
The noughties, there we go. They were all filled with false starts and dead ends. Several government administrations have come and gone, along with several changes of prosecutors and judges charged with running the Brabant investigation, and every single one of them made zero progress. No matter who came in and said, listen, I'm taking over, they would get nowhere. Then, after little to no progress for decades, in 2017, a section of the Permanent Oversight Committee on the Police Services was appointed and tasked with officially looking into whether or not there truly was a link between the Gendarmerie and the Brabant gang, and if so, just how deeply it ran. They were like, we just want to finally truly know what are the actual links with proof.
Yeah, and they looked into it, and as a result, they began to happen. And in 2019, it turned out to be a oddly significant year, with maybe the biggest development in the entire history of the investigation hitting the headlines in January.
I love that. They didn't look into links between the Brabant gang and the Gendarmerie for decades. They're always like, they're definitely police. There are definitely links to the police.
Yeah.
So many people have been arrested and investigated are police. Should we actually truly look into it? No.
Give it a few years.
Let's wait 30 years before we actually try and find out if there are members of the police involved.
That's the time to do it.
Yeah. And then suddenly things start happening. It's like, Jesus.
So the Belgian Federal Police, they announced that they'd made an arrest. An ex-gendarmerie, Philippe Vermersch, who known publicly as Philippe V, was confirmed to have been a detective during the time of the original investigation. So Mr. V was arrested on conspiracy charges and alleged to have played a role in the planting of evidence in order to derail the investigation. The accusations actually go way back to 1986 and a certain mysterious bag of evidence. So in November of 1986, police divers retrieved a bag from the bottom of a canal close to where a witness had seen two men dumping items into the water the year before.
Which is when, after their final attack at the supermarket, a witness saw two people dumping shit into a river near where they found an abandoned car.
Exactly, yep. Of the weapons found, several were linked to the gang's crimes, including guns that had been used to kill 72-year-old former taxi driver turned caretaker Jose van den Einde in December of 82, Angela Constantin, who was also a taxi driver that we mentioned in 83, and the Schmusiks, who owned a jewelry shop in 83. So you remember when you mentioned nothing was found when the area was searched at the time, and that's true. So why was a bag of guns found there a year later? Prosecutors alleged that it was because it had been planted by Philippe along with several colleagues. Philippe and several other implicated officers claimed it was simply there because the search at the time hadn't involved divers in the water. In which case, why not?
Yeah, exactly. We'll search the water, but we won't dive in. We'll just, have a look around the top.
Right, yeah, like they had witnesses showing like the gang throw a bag of guns in and they're like, nah, we'll leave it. And then a year later, we're like, oh, we'll go look now.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they were planted there later on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also in February 2019, Philippe's arrest, followed by that of his colleague at the end of January, clearly shook the right trees, and the Brabant killings were splashed across the newspapers once again after the suicide of 78-year-old Roger Rommelart. So Roger, he was another retired gendarmerie and a colleague of Philippe V.
So we had three former gendarmeries who were just derailing the investigation from the start.
Absolutely, yeah. And he was part of the Delta team who ran the contemporary investigation into the Brabant crimes.
So he wasn't even just derailing the investigation when it was ongoing, even later on. They were like, he's still derailing it. So it's no wonder they could never find anything linking anyone to anybody. He was like there for like 30 years, every day probably going in, I'll just burn these fingerprints or like delete this shit, throw out these files.
Yeah. You look over there while I shred something over here.
Look over there, I think it's the Brabant gang.
The timing of Roger's suicide in and of itself, it was certainly a little more than suspicious. And it was clear confirmation of the existence of a widespread conspiracy in the gendarmerie. So according to his daughter, Roger had been very visibly worried about something in the days before his suicide, though he never spoke about what it was. Roger, he left a note, which was dated February 1st, but its contents have not been made public. Yet another lead that seemed to be a key in cracking the case, but ended up an infuriating dead end, at least publicly anyway.
They probably weren't actual members of the Brabant gang, but they were definitely buddies.
Well aware of it.
Yeah, definitely buddies with them. So, as I said at the beginning, as we were researching this case, Belgian officials, they actually made an announcement in the summer of the year 2024. Unfortunately, for the survivors and most of Belgian society who are still hoping to one day wake up to the news that the identities of the mad killers of Brabant have finally been revealed, whether dead or in their late 70s. The announcement, however, it wasn't some huge breakthrough or Columbo, just one last thing moment. Is that a good Columbo impression? Thank you. Unfortunately, the announcement the Belgian officials made was that officially, for now at least, the case on the Brabant killings is closed.
We have a huge announcement about the Brabant killings. Okay, great. What is it? We're closing it.
We don't know who did it, and let's just not talk about it ever again. That's basically what it is. I give
up.
Yeah, exactly. That's their announcement. They did say, of course, that if any new evidence should come to light, it could be reopened, but we're not going to investigate and try and find any new evidence. So, listen, our job here is done. Yet another piece of fine work from the stellar Belgian investigative services.
Formed a big circle and given each other a big pat on the back. So, I don't know. Job well done, I guess.
Knocked this one out of the park. So naturally, people are skeptical, and more than a few just called it, well, essentially, yet another cover-up. Because, as I said, this goes all the way to the top. NATO, Mr. NATO, up top said, shut it down. Shut it down coast to coast. And here we are. I guarantee, I'm telling you, one day, well, probably not. Listen, folks, if it's been reported that I drove myself out to the woods and shot myself 5 times in the back of the head, you know what's happening.
Yeah, it's not just me looking for content.
You'd be in the trunk of the car, I guarantee it. You're my co-conspirator. So, whatever reason, for now, the case will remain frustratingly unsolved, and the killers of 28 people in a 5-year-long crime spree remain free to this day. Now, the case did seemingly shut down before when the statute of limitations did run out. In Belgian law, the statute of limitations allowed 15 years for the government to be able to identify and arrest the culprits. As a result, a special extension was granted, but that originally ran out in 2015. However, Belgian officials amended it to leave there no time limit on this particular crime. The Brabant crimes gets special treatment. So in theory, there could be somebody put behind bars. I mean, there's no statute of limitations on, well, I mean, again, I don't know anything about Belgium. Maybe in Belgium there is a statute of limitations on murder. I know in most countries there isn't.
Yeah.
So they murdered 28 people, so don't think they but there you go. Anyway, so that, my friends, is the story of the timeline, the conspiracy, suspects. What a conspiracy. This one goes all the way to the top. And that is the story of the mad killers of Brabant. Definitely I truly do think it is one of Europe's, if not the world's, greatest mystery. I never see it mentioned, but this is insane.
Well, maybe you don't see it mentioned because it's a big media cover-up.
Oh my god, I bet this episode will just you get tanked. This will do no views. The algorithm is going to suppress this episode.
It will help my ego if this bombs. That's not us.
Yeah.
We did a great job.
Well, then we know we're talking the truth.
There we go. Exactly, yeah. So if it bombs, we just know it's a great episode.
Yes, exactly. And that they're scared. We have them running.
we have on the ropes.
Yeah. Well, there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed this two-parter on the Brabant gangs. Pretty wild.
Yeah, very, very good. Really enjoyed that.
So that's it, Sinead. That's the story of that. Next week, we are doing, Keith, what are we doing? You're actually looking into it as we record next week. We're doing something a little bit different. Not a true crime Marooney next time. We're doing 2 episodes on true crime. So I think next week we will do something maybe a bit spookier.
2 episodes of true crime. That'll do you. And then we're going to get, as I said, a bit more spooky.
We're going to have a bit of a spooky horror story for y'all next week. Keith was very excited to tell. I don't want to spoil it because I don't like to just spoil and tell people what the next episode's going to be. But Keith was very excited to explain some of the story that he's researching into.
Yeah, I was really enjoying telling about. You're like, save it for the podcast.
I know. I was like, stop telling me. I want to hear it live. But it's a very ghostly, spooky story. So look forward to that one, folks. Please, as always, here, listen. Thank you so much for listening. It means a lot to me and Keith. Don't forget to rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps out tremendously. And we will see you in the next episode, which will be up. Well, it'll be up when it's up, I guess. I don't know when you're listening to this. So you know what? Just listen to it then. Please, do for me.
Until then, I'll see you.
I'll see you too. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.